What's up? So I'm here today with Janet Miller. She is the executive director of Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gambling. It's always, I always get tongue tied on that. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you, DJ?
I'm great. So we've known each other for a little while now, and I've helped you in the marketing world, but I actually want to sit down with you today and just chat about the actual organization and what all we've been going through the past few years and what it is you guys do. So
yeah, in fact, certainly in the last year with the pandemic or so, it's been a change even for us. We picked up for Louisiana a recovery warm line for those people who are first responders to call us. Let's say they're leaving a shift or even on shift, and they just need to talk to somebody just to debrief. And then we also have a same line for people in recovery, so that even though there are a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of international, national meetings, if they just want somebody to just vent to and talk to. So we've opened that line up since the pandemic. Our organization has been around since 1994, and we're a nonprofit organization that started with problem gambling help. We started working with the gaming industry and state police and the governor's office to implement treatment and helpline services for Louisiana.
okay. And so you guys started initially to cover mainly the casino gambling in the Louisiana area, and everything's evolved since then. We have so much more sports and online betting going on, right. And the entire evolution of gambling as a whole has shifted from what it was. So what's been the most interesting thing being that it's less hands-on and more digital now? How's that affected the organization?
Well, we added almost 6 years ago now, we added chat and text so that people could get a hold of us through our website and chat with us if they just wanted to get information or talk or get some support. And then we added texting because more and more people text rather than pick up the phone and call. And so that evolved. And then also with sports wagering, that's been coming around the last couple years, but even before that, daily fantasy sports. So we've been trying to really stay ahead of the game with helping people, providing resources and services, not only in Louisiana, we do that, but around the country.
Okay. And so this is something that's interesting too, because a lot of people, when they think gambling, and addiction and problems, they don't realize how vast that issue is and how many people are affected. These are regular everyday people. These are not just, some people contribute it to, all they think about is addicts, and they contribute it to drugs and, low poverty, scenarios. And a lot of times this is your normal everyday people that are having these issues.
Well, even in the year 2000, 2001, NBC Dateline got a hold of us and wanted to do a show on problem gambling and treatment. We were the only treatment center, other than one other one in Minnesota, that was doing residential care. And the reason for that, and they came down here, they decided not to pick a man and to pick a female who was like a action player, which is somebody who, she really liked poker and blackjack and some of the more thinking games than most what they thought females at the time. So what's happened is very quickly we evolved in seeing that it wasn't just somebody who was homeless or somebody who was in poverty. We were looking at people that were running cities and running businesses, handling a lot of big accounts, people that we were next to, our family and friends that were having a problem. Our biggest concern was you couldn't tell this one by looking at someone. Like drugs and alcohol, you can usually either smell it, see it, test for it. Gambling, you can't.
Yeah, so it's basically just a hidden issue that we're trying to, and another thing too is that a lot of people are embarrassed they have these issues. And so how do you guys, make the connection there, or, trying to bring people in and help them without, them being exposed, basically?
Very similar to, we have a lot more stigma, I think, still about problem gambling. Similar, though, to what we used to have for mental illness and drug addiction or alcoholism. And so we're really trying to get the education out there, like the podcast, like you're doing, to get people to understand that it really does hit people that you would think wouldn't get addicted to gambling. It does tend to have sometimes a lean towards a higher IQ or a higher level of social aptitude and aptitude. And so what we look for are people who are kind of bright and used to handling a lot of pressure and a lot of different situations, but that sometimes need a break from that. And they don't really want to drink alcohol or use drugs for whatever reasons. And they don't tend to have mental illness. We have seen with the mental illness for this population, there's a lot of co-occurring depression or anxiety, but still with anxiety and depression, you don't always see that with
Yeah.
people. So really trying to get the education out there and not have people so embarrassed and ashamed. But we do still have other people that say, well, can't they just quit? Don't
Yeah.
take that much money, leave your credit cards at home. And it's like, if it were that easy, it's kind of like a diet. I always tell people, if we all would stick to a diet and exercise, we'd all have a normal body size.
We all have the knowledge of how to do that, but it's not that simple,
Right. And it is simple, but it's not so easy to follow and to stay, very obedient to the plan. So with this disorder being hidden and invisible, that you can't see it with the naked eye, we really want people to have a conversation. That became our national motto the last like 4 or 5 years, was that we need to be talking about gambling, just regular, every day, every week, every month gambling that people do, because in talking about something may show somebody who has a problem that they have some difficulty talking about their gambling now versus maybe a year ago. And also, we want to help people to understand we need to be talking about stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
We've normalized gambling in our society. We not only can do it in establishments like we do brick and mortar, but now it's online and everywhere in the country and across and beyond. And so we want to be able to say, if you gamble, that's fine. I mean, we're not even against gambling. We're neutral on gambling. We just want people to get the help that need the help.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier some trigger points, and what do these things do? Because we've had previous conversation about these things, but how it affects working environments, friends and family, people who may know that these issues are going on but don't know how to deal with it. What do you guys do on that front?
I think that one of the things I tell people is if we can't see it, how are we ever going to help anyone? And so one is talk about and ask about if somebody gambles, just like we talk about somebody going out drinking or other things that people do. Let's talk about it. The other part is watch if somebody seems to always have money issues on a cash basis. So you want to pay attention. And also if there's a personality change with people when they gamble. So if you're in a family and you tend to go to the casino or you go to a poker room or whatever and you play, is something change in their personality when they're in play, when they're in action of gambling? Because most of us stay the same when we're doing whatever activity, but sometimes a problem gambler will change. They'll get quieter, they'll be more sullen, they'll get more serious where you can't talk to them, you can't joke with them or laugh, or sometimes they just don't want to be around anybody else. And gambling, like social drinking and social events, are usually with other people. And then you'll start seeing, well, I thought we were going to go to the casino later, and the guy already went. I don't need to go or whatever. And you go, well, so it just starts changing the way that they gamble, or they stop talking about it, yet you kind of sense that they're still gambling. So you want to bring it up, keep talking about it, because what can happen is they think that you don't get it, you don't know, because you're not talking about it. And that's kind of a red flag too for me. If I don't really want to talk about something with someone, yet it's what a lot of people do and a lot of our country gambles, it's strange that we wouldn't want to talk about something that most people do, but maybe it's because there might be a problem there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting too, because like if you think about drug addiction, alcoholism, those things, once they get to be a problem, you see those people, move away, and they're not doing that socially as much, and they're doing that by themselves. It's always, a concern at that point. So it's very interesting because I had no idea there were the same variants there.
There is. And then also with gambling, because you can do it on so many different venues, like you can do it on your computer, you can do it on your, they have to go to a brick and mortar anymore. And especially now, keep talking about it, keep being very open to it, understand that anyone can get a problem with this at any time in their life. What we do see is oftentimes after a traumatic event or a loss, some people will start developing a problem with gambling or drugs or alcohol, and certainly mental illnesses can occur then because the body's response and the brain changes that go on through trauma. Of course, we're just coming through a pandemic, which we've never been through. So it's another big factor we're all watching to see in the next year or two how gambling and also like alcohol and drugs, there seems to be a lot more alcohol drinking this past year. And so we're having to watch to see what does that mean in another year or two from now.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there's so many people, the economy's down, there's so many people that are out of jobs. I could see where that, would be a concern or an issue that, I mean, we've all went through it. And then, yeah, that's something someone turns to, which is unfortunate when it becomes an issue, but,
Well,
so,
and we have people that call, like we also answer a suicide prevention helpline.
okay.
And so we have different callers on different helplines, but sometimes they overlap. Like obviously, sometimes people are suicidal when they're coming out of a gambling binge. And sometimes people who are calling on our suicide prevention helpline have just quit gambling, or they're coming off of alcohol and drugs and they think that's it, I can't do this anymore. And so we have a lot of overlap with the callers. So we just have
more than others. Or do you have those metrics offhand? I mean,
what we are seeing is an uptick of younger male sports gamblers calling,
okay.
Younger being 25 to 35, and they're actually calling and seeking help and stating that they've been gambling with sports before it became legal in whatever state, because we answer 21 states helplines like that. But they're admitting that it's becoming quickly out of hand for them, especially if their state became legal. That's a difference from problem gambler calls before. So we want to pay attention to our young men who may have always played some poker, played some cards, done some things, but and maybe always placed some bets. But it is different and more accessible. And that's what we look for with addiction is there a lot of accessibility to do that addiction? And nowadays it's all over the place to be able to gamble, but really ultimately just take your cell phone.
Yeah.
And you can do it right there.
Yeah. There's been I'm aware of some people in my sphere of influence that are, that enjoy doing sports betting. I, for one, don't really have any knowledge in it. I've looked into it, and, in the fight world and was like, okay, I don't know what this means with this, the variance and the plus, the minus. I'm just like, I'm not putting any money in it because I probably will lose it all. But I mean, I know it's something that's convenient, especially when it's able to be put behind a passion, if you're passionate about football or, baseball or whatever it may be.
Right.
And being able to, just like the fantasy league thing, right? And being able to, play each other.
And most of the time, most gamblers think that they know.
Yeah.
And so you it's not like you're not going to place a bet where you go, I'm going to lose it. Yeah. I really hope to lose it. You really believe that, and even though the metrics and everything of the whole layout can look like they would win, it's still a chance.
Right.
I mean, things can happen in any game, in any sports arena that can change it in one moment, So there's that piece too, is that oftentimes you'll hear people talk about, well, I already know who's going to win. I've already placed a bet. I mean, I'm good to go. And they lose.
Yeah.
And you go, normal people just go, well, it happens. I mean, it was that one shot in golf and he started breaking apart, mental game. And then the other person that was a problem says, somehow that just can either infuriate them or they don't want to talk about that because there's a sense of that somehow they were wrong and stupid or ignorant about it. And they weren't. It's just part of the chance piece that they forget about when they place the bet.
Do you have had this thought, do you have people reach out to you who may be into stocks they're wasting money? Yes. Okay, because that's something interesting we never talked about. But I could see where that would be another issue.
Right. And that's easy to do. And in fact, we almost promote that. That's what we look at too, is we kind of almost think they're the upper echelon gambler is somebody who gets not only to do the stock market, but then they get somebody else's money to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
And that can be just as much of a problem because you can stay on that 24/7. You just have to have access. You can be moving accounts, changing things. So it's a constant, and you have to watch it, you plan for
Yeah.
it. People get obsessed with it. Very easy to do. But again, there seems to be a lot more sense of that's okay with our society sometimes with that one. And it's not. We really have to watch out with people.
Yeah, because I think as soon as you said that about the, them not, thinking that they were wrong somehow, but I've noticed that in people that trade, a lot of stocks, do like stock, they get so emotional about something.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's just a transaction. And once they become emotional, it's like it changes the thought process of how stuff is moved around, and they're willing to put more into something, not guaranteed that's going to get, come back. But at the same time, they're hoping it will, and then they get devastated. It's just one of those things. I have seen that, and I've noticed it. I've been watching over the past few years as it's transitioned, and during COVID, it's become more accessible, just like the
Mm-hmm.
sports gambling, to where you can do
Right.
it. You can do it immediately. Like funds are available immediately. You can transact
Right.
immediately. You don't have to wait 4 days. Whatever it may be.
Right. It's and that's also what we're seeing is that the more accessibility to the faster movement of money and exchange and credit and stuff is also part of this addiction. Is it moves really fast. And that's why we see that it's so easy to spend so much money so quickly.
Yeah.
Before they even realize. Some of what we've been working on with the gaming industry is putting barriers and boundaries in that would put a stopgap. Like, hey, DJ, you've already put in $500 to this, or you've already moved 3 accounts in the
Yeah.
last 10 minutes. Would you like to take a break or whatever? And so some people get really angry about that, but some people appreciate that because it does give them that, wait, I need to slow down.
Yeah. I
Those people
don't
get
think that's
really angry. I wonder about that.
Yeah, I don't. Well, it's just like a, something on a, a computer, like when you're moving around throughout a website or something. But yeah, I mean, I think that I think that's something to help. I don't see that if there's ever anything that's put into regulation, that wouldn't be, you know, I don't think
Well,
that would be that big of an issue.
that's everything that they're trying to understand is how can
Right.
we build in some responsible gambling or responsible player, kind of boundaries for those who don't have a problem. They really won't,
It
but
won't bother them.
appreciate it.
Won't
Right.
bother them. Yeah.
But the other people who need it fast and furious and need it to, and again, once you keep moving it that fast, you forget. And then next thing you know, you look back at your accounts or your credit card or your activity and you think, how did I do all that?
Yeah.
Well, so if we slow it down, everything is able to be seen. Doesn't mean they won't do it, doesn't mean they're not out of control, but we're trying to find ways to help build into the system through the internet and through federal and international laws. How can you do this without, people say, well, it's my money, I can do whatever, you can't. So there's all these different arguments and all the different people in the side. So
Yeah, it's something that's it's just very interesting to me because since you and I have been working together the past few years and in conversation, I really never thought about it. And here's something else that's interesting. Growing up, you saw the movies where there's underground sports betting, and you've seen like where the bookie was looking to
yeah,
take someone's kneecaps out because of
yeah,
they owed them so much money. But what's interesting is since this has evolved over the past 10 to 15 years, I can't recall this ever even being brought to attention, as far as use of, in movies or anything like that. So there's
right.
not a lot of attention on this.
No, there isn't. And I think again, because we tend to normalize it,
Mhm.
and we also find it to be okay. Like I can't tell you the hundreds of families I've worked with over the years that said it's really okay if the kids play poker down in the basement as long as they're not out getting high or drinking,
Right.
running the roads, driving their vehicles. I'm like, hey, just so you know, there's a percentage downstairs that are going to get addicted. And they're like,
Yeah.
no way. Because we just never thought about it. Yet we all know historically there have been people that have gotten addicted to gambling, but it's kind of like you hear about that notorious one or two
Yeah.
rather than like that's why Dateline did their show through us, was to show that it's very normal and it can be with any man or woman whose family who has children and works a job and is responsible generally, but also has a problem with gambling.
Are there any statistics like 1 in 100 or something like that that you guys have put together, like based on population?
Statistically, the national average is about 1 to 2% of the population develops a problem with gambling.
Okay.
For Louisiana,
that's quite a
it's
lot.
higher.
Okay.
Well, actually, 2,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
yeah, but
3 to 5, that's a lot.
that's quite a lot when you're talking about millions of people, you know?
Right.
And it's something that, you know, I'm glad we're able to have this conversation today, because it is something that I wasn't very well educated on, but I know this is an issue, but since, you know, we talk about it, it is something that is kind of a silent killer at the
Right.
same time that we've normalized. So tell me this, how did you get into this?
I actually got into it. I've been a counselor for 37 years.
Okay.
It was the previous executive director of LACG, Reese Middleton, who invited me to come on board. We had worked together 35 years ago at a hospital.
Okay.
And he said, I want you to open this program core, and I want you to hire the staff, set up the program. That's kind of been my background professionally, to not only counsel, but to work up programs. And it intrigued me because it was back in 1998 we were talking, and no one was doing much in the casinos, and the racetracks, everything were just opening up in 94 in Louisiana. And it intrigued me because I would see people in treatment that were having problems with drugs and alcohol, or they were having problems with mental illness, and they looked hungover, they didn't look right. They come to treatment and they come to sessions, and I'd screen them and they were clean, and I'd ask them what's going on. And I never thought to ask them if they were at the boats or if they were at a casino or anything. And that's when it started happening. They were saying, well, listen, I've started gambling, and I think that might be as much of a problem. And I just never thought about it like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I started getting a hold of people nationally and internationally that were good in this field that was very, very small at the time in the 90s. And then they started training me. We started bringing people in to Louisiana. We started learning things more and more about it. And so Reese and myself, we just went after it. And that's when we talked to and got a helpline going. Started after a few years, the outpatient counseling center that we have. And we really knew that this was something that was going to be different, because we couldn't identify it just by the naked eye. We couldn't look at people and say they seem to have maybe some mental illness, or they seem to be high or drunk. And we just weren't seeing it. And that was a challenge to me clinically. I thought, you know, this has got to be something. And then when I met some of the first families I worked with, what I was just blown away as a clinician was how angry and hurt and different that was, because you have just now affected people's security and livelihoods. And some people had double mortgages, didn't even know they had one. You know, they thought they paid off their mortgage. Right. And here they're sitting with all these mortgages and credit cards. And it was just something I thought, well, if I can help families do something different, then I need to help families do something different. Just piqued me clinically to say, you know, I need to learn about this. There's something going on with this disorder. And we saw more and more of it. And then we started having people calling us and saying, hey, you know, I don't know that I can get help at CORE because of who I am. And I'd be like, I don't know that you cannot not get help.
Yeah.
Because also the treatment is free in Louisiana, and that's what blows people away. But out of some of the taxed gambling money in Louisiana, and out of lottery tax money and video poker, they have a pool of money that's dedicated just for helpline treatment, prevention, and services for problem gamblers and their family. So they don't have to do anything but show up or call the numbers. And I love that, because many states do not have what we have in Louisiana.
Yeah, and that's something that too, that, you know, we're in a society now where there's very low accountability. It's just what we've done to ourselves over the past 2 decades. And so yeah, it does make it a lot easier. Someone can have a conversation without having to go out of their way and get out of their comfort zone to have that conversation.
Right. And I think also knowing that more and more people are trying to help people in this area. And also we're training other counselors around the state. We stay on top of national trends and international information. It's like everything. You try to learn from someone else. You don't have to reinvent the wheel of that. And so we're seeing, just like with the changes with the sports wagering and sports betting, that we've got to be much more savvy about the internet and the interplay with young people who possibly, what we're seeing now is maybe some people who were gamers, who are into gaming, that there may be a passage in the brain that's easier to access over into gambling problems if they had a history of gaming as a young person.
Yeah, because I mean, that's something that's, I'm sure over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be able to have some really good metrics there, but it's something that's kind of new, right? Where gaming has taken I'm sure, I don't know those numbers, but I would say it's probably increased hundreds of percent of people that are doing it because of these devices right here,
Right. And it is, and it's $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
So we kind of sometimes slam on the gambling industry, but the gaming industry is huge.
Yeah.
So
what I like about what you guys are doing is what you said earlier, is that you're not against it. You're not against gambling. We're not sitting here having this conversation saying you should not gamble. We're sitting here having this conversation saying, if you're doing it and it's creating an issue with your family, your well-being, your financials, then you guys are here to help you.
Right. Because we're not fighting against gambling is the problem, because in truth, many, many more people gamble and don't have a problem. Obviously, statistically, 97% of Louisiana people who gamble won't have a problem.
Okay.
So the 2 to 3%, maybe 3 to 5 who have a problem, that's who we want to focus on.
Yeah.
The other people, go play, entertain yourself, do whatever you're doing, probably will never develop a problem. Some of those people, majority of them, will never create a problem for themselves. Not worried about them, not focused on them, not into shaming them to not do it or whatever. Go have fun. We just want to focus on the people who have a problem, or their families who notice that there's some kind of problem. And sometimes with this addiction, we hear families will say, like husbands and wives will say, I thought they were having an affair. They were spending so much time away, so much money away. I thought it was someone else. Not that that isn't going on sometimes. Sometimes it is too. But also then they thought they were out drinking or using drugs, never coming home looking disheveled. And it was actually gambling.
Yeah.
And maybe they were drinking sometimes, but most people, when they're into playing and into decision making with gambling, and if gambling is the addiction, they want to be very clear headed. They may drink and use after they're done gambling to relax and calm down, to go to sleep. But during the play, they usually like to be very bright and alert. Okay.
That was the next question I had too, have you seen more of drug or alcohol, attributed to the gambling issue? Has there been a link there? Which one? If I were to guess, I would assume alcohol would be a bigger trigger than drugs, but I don't know those. I was just wondering.
Research depends on where you're looking at some of the research, but we are seeing for years that alcohol is very much one of the co-occurring disorders with it. And, they do usually give free alcohol at many of the establishments. And even some of the illegal places will do the same. Maybe won't always allow drugs in, but you can do that without having to, do it legally. But yes, we do see almost 50 to 55% of problem gamblers will usually have a drug or alcohol problem as well. So sometimes they end up in treatment or detox for that problem. And then we all find out, hey, it's really the gambling that's probably primary. And, so we start working at whichever end we can start at. But usually if they're detoxing, we want them to do that first.
Okay. Well, and another thing that comes to mind, growing up and recognizing, because I'm just thinking about people that, this is something that's so hidden that, seeing the older people growing up, when I was growing up, they were always playing video poker. That's something that I remember being a big issue. And I noticed that as a child, seeing those things, like, man, they do that a lot. They're spending a lot of time and money in these places, whether it be a truck stop or, diner or what have you. But are those, I'm sure they're not as popular these days, but is that something that's still?
I'm curious to see that what it's going to show, certainly after the pandemic too.
Yeah.
But Louisiana has actually stayed very high with the percentages of video poker players that call us. Again, not everybody who has a problem or everybody that gambles calls us, right? But those who call us tend to be a higher percentage of video poker players. It used to be almost 50% gender were calling,
Okay.
as many women and men, and they were about the age of 45. Now again, what we're seeing though is sports betting is getting that uptick, and younger men are calling us.
And your guys, and by the time you get the metrics, it's been a while. It's been long enough for them to realize they're an issue. So there's always going to be a delay there, right? And there's nothing you can do about that, because that's just how it works.
Right. Because that's at self-will. People can do whatever they want to do. Even, the one thing that is against the law still is suicide.
Yeah.
And suicide changes things. We got to get them some help if they won't do that. But everything else they can do legally and keep doing it. Even phones all the time.
Yeah.
That sometimes that's part of the action, is staying on the phone and moving gaming around and then gambling around and accounts around and checking your banking accounts and credit. And that's part of action for problem gambling. So just pay attention to who you're up against. And my thing is always, if people are spending more screen time or phone time than they are person time, that's not healthy.
Well, I mean, so I was looking at these numbers the other day for a presentation for some networking, and you're looking at 3.5 hours on average. And this was a study done last year, because we haven't had long enough for the pandemic year. But before COVID, 3.5 hours per day average on this device, worldwide. We're not just talking about the States, where we're probably using it more than that, and that's insane when you're talking about 70% of the world population having one of these devices, and then 3.5 hours a day used on one of these devices is just
person to person time you have in a day.
Yeah.
Because what I've been concerned about with kind of the sociology of all this is how we're not becoming comfortable anymore with just talking.
Exactly.
Like we don't even talk as much on the phone or like this, DJ, as we do texting.
Yeah.
As we do on emails and stuff. So we're really removing that personal touch, which also means that we're able to hide more and more things.
And it also makes your job harder too, because you have to have that conversation to make a conversion. There's no emotion in text and email, right? So like,
well, they do like to text and chat online. We really want to get them to call us.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think it would be more effective to have a conversation, but however you can get that in and you have that conversation is great. But I just feel like, person to person is a little more effective.
Well, it is. And just like we started during the pandemic, teletherapy like this is that we're doing a lot of teletherapy now where we never did it like this, but it's actually showing that it can be as effective, because it's hard for you to say, I can't get there. Yeah. It's like, well, you just get your phone or get something, of course you can. And so that's why I think also in due time, we'll see how these different ways of teletherapy and telehealth can help people who may not have reached out, who would have had some barriers to get somewhere.
Yeah, because I think that this is an effective way to have a conversation too. And we've actually adjusted in the past year because a lot of us had to use this way, and part of the way this podcast was built was having these conversations, remotely. Unfortunately, scheduling conflict with the studio today made us, have to have a Zoom show today. But at the same time, we're still having the conversation here, and you can see us, you know what I mean? So it means a little more than just, just doing it, via a device. Now, what have you guys seen as far as how effective, once someone has reached treatment, to, coming out and, kind of getting ahead? What have you seen there?
Well, we did some outcome studies throughout the years that we've been open with our treatment program as well as our outpatient treatment program. And we've seen a very high rate of success if people go through the residential program and continue on for the next year or two in counseling or different groups, different support services and resources, as high as like 86%. So you
Okay,
take
that's great.
someone, it's wonderful. Of course, the key is everybody needs to continue doing what they need to do. I just talked to a young man today who said, I left CORE a couple of years ago and I did only half of what I was supposed to do, and I started relapsing on gambling. And so there you go. But what helps him with that is to see, hey, it doesn't work like that. You have to do everything,
Mhm.
because gambling problems, you're all in. It takes over everything in your life. And so in recovery, got to be all into. Got to do everything it takes to stay away from it. And we talked about the relationship with money is more concerning to me when someone's in recovery than not gambling again, because you still have to spend money. You still
Yeah.
have to be appropriate and budget it and talk about it and not get it to trigger you to either make more money or to feel less than because you don't have any right now or you're in debt. And so that's a big piece of what we counsel and work with people on, is to kind of divorce money from your self-esteem or your identity, because you're not what you make or don't make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. I think that's something that's super interesting too, is that you mentioned, those trigger points or what would trigger something. And it just working with you guys, here over the past months, years, realizing that things that we wouldn't
So
even
does everybody who's listening know that I met you as a wee little boy?
probably not. but
You were very young.
but what I was getting at is that, a lot of people don't realize that the way things are put together and presented to someone would actually make someone, would psychologically trigger someone to go spend money on something.
Right.
We do know that in the marketing world, is if I arrange something this way, it looks better.
Right.
But we
Exactly.
don't think about indirectly, if a color scheme of something reminds someone of this organization, they may be more apt to realize, oh, I need to go bet on this, or want to.
Well, right next door for years to our treatment center was a pizza place. I won't say the name, but there was a set of what looked like dice up there.
Okay.
To all the problem gamblers, especially the craps table players, would be like, I can't stand it. Every time I look out there, all I see are dice. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just a sign. And didn't realize that trigger. So it wasn't that it was a casino sign or a video poker or the lottery or anything. It was certain times of the year. And so with any recovery, you want to walk through that and detach it from the addiction and have it something new for the person.
Okay.
But you have to really pay attention to that, because sometimes people go, oh, that's no big deal. I did it with this guy years ago. I was like, it's just it's just a sign.
Yeah.
And he was like, nope, dice. And I was like, you know what? We got to talk about it then. And it was the same when Coke came out. If you popped the lid, and we had a Coke machine at the treatment center, and you popped the lid and it would have a win or a lose inside and tell you what you won.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that was
and I had
while
one
ago,
guy
yeah.
downstairs that was popping he was buying all the sodas, and I was like, what are you doing? And he just couldn't stop. It just got him hooked on it, got caught up in it, and was like, oh my gosh. So every day there are things that can trip someone up that you think, oh, I wouldn't have thought about that.
Well,
But that's why we want to pay attention. It's individual for sure.
yeah.
But also some it's kind of obvious, but we don't think about it again because we're pretty desensitized to gambling now.
Well, something too, like just like you said, that made me think of McDonald's Monopoly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of my actual favorite stories was, and she was one of my first people I worked with, and she had gotten addicted to Reader's Digest and sweepstakes. And for some reason, in my prejudgment, I thought, how slow can that go that you sent in these? I didn't realize the true nature of that whole kind of conglomeration of what they're working towards and how much money was involved. In fact, she lost all of her retirement. Her husband had passed away. Her family was distraught. She was 85 years old, and she fell in love with her mailman. And the mailman represented to her the connection to the mail that was coming in, and had a great infatuation with him. And so that was interesting to me, that what I had learned was she had stacks of mail that would come in, and she would send out $9 and $2 and $50, and thinking that she was going to go into that next big pot. And so I
Yeah.
really had to learn about, wow, there is a lot to this, but it wasn't just once a week she was doing that. It's like bingo. Like some people would come in and they go, I'm a bingo player. And I'd be like, wow, like what, we're talking 30, cards out
Yeah.
there and daubers they're working it. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, you're for real. So it just really depends on the person, and also again their age and what they're used to. But for some people, it's easy, obviously, to hide your mail, which is some of the things that I found was interesting. And I've talked to so many families about, is you have to do credit checks on your family members, especially like states like Louisiana. If you're married, it's shared debt and your partner, because you're going to share that, good or bad. And a lot of times problem gamblers will forget the loans and the credit cards they open, that they're still open, that they didn't shut down. So it's just important to do that and to look at that and to make sure that you're working on that as, and let's say if you're single, that's fine, but you need somebody to help you to look at your money and managing it and budgeting it.
Well,
For
bringing
sure.
that up too raises another alarm for me, is like, so codependency, and then family members who may be actually not letting things happen and not
Right.
realizing there's an issue. Do you see that a lot too?
We do. And I think the one thing we call it bailing them out,
Yeah.
is oftentimes, you so love people and you want to help people out. And so what we'll see in families is this sister's given a little bit of money, this brother's paid this off, mom and dad have done, and no one was sharing that information. And now that they shared it, they're like, wow, we have tens
Yeah.
of thousands of dollars. What? And so the problem gambler will make sure no one's talking about that, but there may be loans and credit and debt and stuff out there that they even forget about too. And so you really want to have everybody talking about that and saying to each other, because what will happen is, like, mom will give the money, but she won't tell dad.
Yep.
And then dad will get upset, like,
Yep.
what? So yeah, you really have to say, families, we got to work together and got to communicate. And if one's going to do it, you got to tell the other one, even if you're going to do it. But the bailout doesn't help, because what happens is, if a gambler, let's say they have $1,000 debt and somebody pays that, then they're done.
Yeah.
There's no
gonna be another one.
pressure.
Yeah.
And problem gamblers, when they call us, there's pressure on. So I like that pressure for them.
Right.
I like some kind of pressure, because then they're going to call and get some help, hopefully, to get better and get out of the addiction. But with no pressure, why should they change?
Well, it's lack of accountability, right? They're taking away that they were accountable for this debt. Now it's been taken away, so they don't have any accountability at this point.
Right.
Just
And
stack it back
it's
on.
not real world.
No.
Once you get past a certain age, it's on you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's your debt. You signed for, you're not a child.
But isn't it always interesting how the ages, the progression of age, who people, you have these 80-year-old parents that are still helping a 40-year-old,
Right.
It's crazy that we have that, still going on.
Yeah. And I truly believe it's from this great place in their heart.
Yeah.
Of parents. And I understand it, because once a parent, always a parent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old they get, but it never serves good purpose. If they don't change the behavior after one time of helping them financially, then stop helping them.
Yeah.
Because people do get in trouble. People get something that happens, things occur, and you help them one time, you should see a complete change and they should be paying you back.
Yeah.
If you're doing it a second time, you need to stop and look at that, because something's amiss, not only in your behavior, obviously, but in their lifestyle. Because grown adult people need to not buy things they can't afford, need to live within their means, need to take care of themselves. In fact, we're supposed to be taking care of our parents as they get older, not the other way around.
Isn't that funny? We've normalized debt. This country's normalized it to where, just like you said, we've normalized gambling. It's a debt, and then it's an
Well,
issue.
look at how much they show all the commercials about how great it is to have a high credit score.
Yeah.
Well, guess how you get a high credit score?
High debt.
You get high debt and you just pay off stuff and
Yeah.
you get high. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to
And so
have
I'm like, no.
you have to have the higher the credit
No.
limit,
Yeah.
the higher the score. It's an
Don't
interesting
do
how
it.
that works.
Don't do
It's
it.
one of those things, like it's just what we were built on, but and then playing within those means, it's something that people, like you were saying earlier, that people may not realize that these are issues that common people have, but it is a very, very, reoccurring issue across all demographics. And, like you said, in the ages, the fact that it's now affecting 25 to 35-year-olds more than it was, 20 years ago to the 45-year-old, it's just interesting. And because it's become more convenient.
Right. And it's so easy to get loans, credit cards.
Yes.
To get a hold of money. And of course, we have all these people that call and say, we think those, we say payday loans, but everybody knows what they are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the high interest should be outlawed in that. Well, we got to pull off supply and demand.
You sign up for it,
We've got to, it's not their fault.
Right.
Just like I say to people, I know that you're angry at gambling, but we have a choice. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
We have to start exercising our right to change that choice. And so I understand it, because I've worked with hundreds of families that get angry about the system or about the industry or whatever, but that's not the problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like we blame, in today's society, we blame social media for the problem. I love this analogy right here. They're like, it's because of social media. No, we're a society. We're just all now connected in this platform, and we're seeing how people interact. If you want to blame anything, blame the internet, because it's the source and social media is just the funnel. You know what I mean? It's just a platform. You can't blame it for these issues.
Well, but so much has been afforded through us in such positive ways with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, to me, it goes back to the will of us to choose to do it either negatively or positively.
Yeah.
Are we helping ourselves and the world around us with it, or are we hurting ourselves in the world around us? And that, to me, is a difference in why I say it's not the gambling is the problem. It's not the internet. It's not the phones or whatever. It's us.
Yeah.
And we have to get back to controlling ourselves and having, like you said earlier, accountability partners. I mean, I work with a lot of people on sexual addictions that have a lot of sites that are bouncing to their friends or people that they stay accountable to, so that they don't keep going there because they think, I can't stop doing it for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's send it out to other friends who will help you and call you upon that behavior if you do that. We need help sometimes when we're in a place that we thought we could handle and it's handling us. So let's just get some help.
That's the biggest thing too. Especially, it's funny too, but that you said, that right now it's a more of a problem in 25 to 35-year-old men, because us as men, we have ego, right? And it's like it has to completely crumble down before let's talk to someone. But at the end of the day, I think it's more monumental to realize that sometimes you have issues and you just have to talk to someone, no matter what it is. I found out in life, as you go through things, you're gonna have to have a conversation with someone. You don't always have it figured out, and especially it's great to have a conversation with someone who's overcome issues like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or
exactly.
someone like you guys who specialize in these things.
Well, that's why probably a third of our staff at all of our programs, at least, if not about almost half, some of them are recovering from either gambling or other disorders. And part of the reason, obviously, they probably choose to work with us is to help other people in a way that they were helped themselves. And so it's amazing sometimes to know that when somebody reaches out, people are going to answer them, and then answer them with the right information, and not hate on them, not shame them, not say, I can't believe you did that. It's more about, okay, now forward, what can we do to help you, and what can you do to help yourself? And I think that's important. And I think, unfortunately, and fortunately for the age group of 25 to 35-year-olds, is that the nice thing is the social media aspect has created a way for you to discuss things and share
Yep.
stuff. The other part, though, is to learn to be vulnerable and to be real during that time. And I think that that's where it can swing the pendulum sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean, you always have I call them the keyboard ninjas.
Yeah,
the people that love to harass someone, but there's no one on the other side.
We actually serve, besides Louisiana for problem
Yes.
gambling helplines, we serve 21 other states.
Okay. Well,
We
you don't have to name all of them.
Yeah, it's too
Okay.
many to name, but
Yeah.
we have a host of them through the National Council on Problem Gambling. We answer their helpline, and then they pay for many states around the country that don't have a council like us who can do that. And then we also independently contract with other states who want us to do that because we've done it since the year 2000. So
Okay.
we've become accredited for our suicide helpline and our problem gambling helpline. We're a pilot program that they've used for accreditation for other problem gambling helplines across the US. And we also have one of the few treatment centers still, CORE, that is available for problem gamblers. And we've had 37 state residents from outside of Louisiana and some people from Mexico, Canada, and Japan through our treatment center.
Okay.
So my thing is, I want Louisiana to know about us as well as other states and countries too.
Yeah.
Because it's free for them.
Right. So I mean, that's something too. So if someone does have an issue, they're listening to this or watching this right now, best number to reach you guys via phone, and then best one to reach you via text message, what would those be?
I think the number one to text or call us is 1-877-770-STOP.
Okay.
And then if you want to chat with us, you can go to help4gambling.org and you can chat with us online on our website.
Okay. Well, a lot of information today, a lot of stuff, even though we've known each other quite a while, there's a lot of stuff I did not know, and I'm glad that we were able to shed light on these things. Any last words of encouragement or thought before we end this thing?
That there's absolutely no one that has to suffer alone, and you just don't have to go it alone. Just call us, text us, chat with us. We're here 24/7, 365, never turn our lights off.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your
You're
time
welcome.
today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this. This is great for us to get the word out.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'm
DJ.
excited about it. Everyone, please subscribe to the podcast.